Hi, everybody. I'm Kaitlyn. So, my presentation is about just exploring Trinidad and Tobago and crime and corruption in the government, and just exploring like crime rates and how that's affecting the community. So, like I said, I'm Kaitlyn. I go to Berkeley Carroll. I'm contingent 40. I have a really personal connection to this topic. Not only am I Trinidadian and Guyanese, but also family members and personal people that I know have been affected by this topic and have been affected by violence in Trinidad. And so I just wanted to bring light to it and explore why this is happening, kind of bring some clarity to the situation. So first I'm going to talk about a little bit of the history, kind of exploring some background information, giving a little backstory of like the structure of the government. And then I'm going to talk about statistics, kind of like contextualizing what's happening, what I'm talking about, exploring the present day, what's happening today, why am I talking about this? And then I'm going to talk about interventions and some of the more like big picture initiatives. So just to give a little bit of history, Trinidad and Tobago gained independence from Britain on August 31st in 1962. And because of this, the government is modeled after the UK government. So in 1976, Trinidad adopted a republican constitution, and that basically means they replaced the monarch with the president elected by the parliament. And then Trinidad and Tobago is also parliamentary democracy, meaning the system of government is where people elect representatives in the parliament to make laws, and then the laws are made by majority vote of the legislature, and then signed by the head of state, who does not have effective veto power. And then most of the time, the head of the state can return a bill to the legislative body when in disagreement. So just talking more about like the crime specifically. So criminal networks often play a really big role in drug trafficking. So Trinidad was a very is a very accessible port for cannabis, heroin, and also cocaine. And because it's at like the northern tip of South America, the surrounding countries such as Venezuela, St. Vincent, Guyana, often use Trinidad as an accessible port to deliver drugs to the US and to Europe. And also it's one of the biggest significant cocaine corridors. And another big problem is also like access to firearms. So because of its connection to Venezuela, gangs in both countries are said to have like transported illegal firearms. And then, so like, for example, in 2019, there's estimated to be over 8,000 illegal guns traveling around the country. And just to give like, kind of contextualize that, as of 2021, the population of Trinidad and Tobago was 1.5 million. And then in 2020, there was an estimated 7.5 deaths per every 1,000 citizen. And then this year, as of 2022, it was estimated 9 deaths per every 1,000 citizens. So as I said, like the crime has been really increasing. So it's kind of blurry, so I don't know how well people in the room could see it, but I'll just use the mouse to kind of like show my point. So this is kind of like showing the increase in crime. And I didn't mention this before, but there is Trinidad has a prime minister named Keith Rowley. So Keith Rowley has been in office since 2015. And according to this chart, you kind of see like from 2011, 2015, crime rates were kind of, yes, there were high numbers like in the late 300s, early 400s, but it was kind of relatively calm to what's happening now. So then when Keith Rowley takes office in 2016, you can see the murder rate is starting to increase. And due to COVID in 2020, murder rates kind of start to slow down a little bit and kind of decrease by a lot. But then as of 2022, there has been a reported 606 murders, and that's only murders that have been reported or like knowledgeable to the public. And then as you can see in like this kind of collective like graphs and table, this is just showing the like different prime ministers, the different political parties. So the red represents the people's national movement, and then the yellow represents the United National Congress. So as you can see, I circled kind of like where Keith Rowley had taken presidency, and then I also circled how high the numbers have been since he's been in office. And then this is just another like kind of graphs like show. It's also kind of blurry, but it's a timeline to like show what the difference in crime rates have been. So in 2009, the crime rate was about like about a level 6. And then as the years go by, it increased slowly to like a 7. And then in 2015, it's still at a relatively low number, which is 7. But then in 2020, that's when Keith Rowley's in office, the number spikes to 8, to late 8s, and like probably like around like a 9. And so what's happening today? Why is this important? Why am I talking about this? So within the past year, like I said, there's been a reported 606 murders. And so at a bunch of scenes, crime scenes, there have been bullet shells that have markings that say TTR, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment. And so the regiment, I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but it's also part of the defense force. And so the regiment has stated that they do not know why shells have been in reported murders and why they have been at the scene of the crimes. And they said they will do investigations about it. They will try to find more information about maybe it's old ammunition, and like rumors have been going around saying that like the regiment has like no idea what's going on. However, the citizens who I've talked to and citizens that I've been in contact with have said otherwise. So like I said, the TTR is part of the defense force, but it's probably one of the main grounds. And so with around like 10,000 men and women, the regiment focuses more on international security, assisting local law enforcement, and overall the betterment of the country. And so another one of like the major political factors was that there has been an increase in how many soldiers have been involved in different crimes. So for example, May 2022, 24-year-old soldier was found in a series of crimes such as robberies, kidnapping, and it was also rumored that this soldier had also murdered a local citizen. And then, as I mentioned before, there are a few instances where bullets were found in crime scenes, and these are just a few clippings. If you could take the time to just like read some of the names, because while it is important to mention that there are like, this is a big issue, a common denominator, it's also important to mention who has been affected, what families have been affected, and kind of like that big picture idea. And then just a little bit about like the government's response to this, what's been happening. So Minister Fitzgerald Hines told citizens that there were like stricter protocols being put in place, but I've done probably about like excessive amount of research, and I actually have not found specific protocols. I have not found lists of anything that have been put out, which is kind of concerning, especially the citizens who have been demanding responses. And so some of like the big picture action that they have put in place is that they're trying to work alongside the police service, working to create protocols, initiatives, and just prevent the use of unauthorized ammunition. What they're focusing for, like in terms of the firearms control, Hines also declared that like there's policy documents which also have not been released. He's saying that they will be released to the cabinet and being put into the legislature. But he also stated that they have another policy that they shared with the police and hopes that it will be put into the program and stuff like that. But again, nothing has been specifically or explicitly said. And so another type of influencer, which I kind of touched on earlier, is gang-related crime increase. So some of the big picture ones, so there was a Muslim gang leader named Anthony Bowie, and so he was murdered in September 2021 in Port of Spain, which is the city capital of Trinidad and Tobago. And this had ultimately caused internal warfare among the Muslim gang, and this gang consists of over 600 members. So kind of contextualizing that, and creating background of why this might be impacting crime rates. No leader means that people are kind of doing what they want and doing with no control. And then there's also that idea again of drug trafficking. So gangs are involved with the movement of drugs, they're provided supplies and resources for cannabis production. There's also like criminal gangs are said to have control over the drug market, and which also like contributed to the increase in variety of pills that have been accessible since 2018. And also gangs have also worked with different migrant workers in Venezuela, worked with different workers in St. Vincent in order to help provide labor for them and also provide money. So that's also a way to increase the economy in all the countries, like surrounding countries. And then something that's like a little less known is state contracts. So state contracts are basically an agreement under contract with the government. So the government pays you money in order to for like public works, and they're paying these gang leaders because they're seen as community leaders. So this essentially means that they're getting like up to like $6 million for public works. But however, we know that these gang leaders have been a part of different activities such as sand mining, fraud, money laundering, drug trafficking. And so these state contracts provoked gang wars and increased homicides because people think this is unfair, that they're getting money for ultimately like trying to protect the community and paying them off, but it's not working. And then there's also this well-known like mafia structure called like the Jamaat al-Muslimin. That's like a coup that's well known in Trinidad, and it's led by Hussein Abu Bakr. And so they're involved in multiple crimes, and this is also said to have been like an influencer in like how many the increase in crime. And so now talking about like interventions, what's being done, what's big picture things that are trying to stop this from happening. So first we have like the Pan American Development Foundation, or the PADF. And so the PADF, they address the needs of the vulnerable populations in Latin America and the Caribbean. So they're trying to basically just promote ultimately the ultimate livelihood of all the citizens. So trying to produce proper education, activate like proper rights, justice, focus on food sustainability, stuff like that. So their specific connections to Trinidad is that they operated in 2013, and they implemented the RAPP, which is the Resistance and Prevention Program. And they're also a part of the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, the CBIS. Specifically, the CBIS offers social crime prevention, training for enforcers of the law, but also it focuses on the community and the youth, specifically because we've seen an increase in how many younger kids and how many younger people are joining gangs. So in order to stop that connection, cut that link, they're trying to connect to the youth by creating conversations around domestic abuse, bullying, violence, kind of stopping that relationship between crime and the community, and then also neighborhood community projects in order to build trust within the government, because the citizens are questioning the government so much. And then the Resistance and Prevention Program is actually funded by the U.S. Department Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, and this ran from October 2013 to January 2019, and included 3 phases, which is just basically saying where it's focused, like in the Bahamas, Suriname, and Trinidad, and then phase 3 was focused in Trinidad and Tobago. And sort of like the last, like bigger, or like the second bigger intervention is the GRACE Project. So the GRACE Project stands for Gang Reduction and Community Empowerment. And so what this basically does is its aim is to reduce specifically gang activity and in that the relationship to crime. And so it's an 18-month training program which offers quote unquote like technical assistance. So this strengthens the police initiatives and awareness for specifically gangs, and ultimately working with the citizens and working with the government in order to stop this from happening behind the scenes. And so people involved are the PADF, the U.S. Department of State, and the U.S. Department of State just like give like why they're working with this project is that their American foreign policy, which focuses on the interests and security of the American people. So working on that international connection, and then also the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs Bureau, they're focusing on fighting crimes and helping foreign governments as well, connecting and building that relationship between other people. And so Minister Hines, he's come out and announced that they're working together, they're doing this together. But what he has said is kind of reiterating everything that I just said without being very specific. And you could kind of see why that might be questionable for the community. And so thank you for listening.